friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. This week's episode is a little different. A few years ago, I was lucky enough to host Season 2 of School Library Connection's One Lesson at a Time podcast. I had a great time doing those episodes, where I got to speak with amazing guests sharing wonderful lessons. If you've heard One Lesson at a Time, the format of the usual SLLN episode probably sounds pretty familiar. Heck, some of the guests and their lessons probably sound familiar too. Since SLC is now open to the public, I thought y'all might enjoy hearing some One Lesson at a Time throwback episodes. What you're going to hear here is a rougher version of the episodes, as One Lesson at a Time had a paid support staff making things sound remarkable. But the guests and their lessons are remarkable on their own. I hope you enjoy this throwback episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. As always, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back, and I am excited that I get to talk to LaDawna Harrington today. She's got such a cool lesson. She had so many cool lessons, but this is a really amazing one. I'm really glad that she's going to get to share it with us. So, LaDawna, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm LaDawna Harrington, and I'm a recently retired high school librarian from Milburn Township. And just a little bit about my work history, it includes middle school. So, and also a corporate librarian, and I worked a couple years at different universities, one in Indianapolis and Ohio University. And I've been a lecturer, part-time lecturer at Rutgers University in their library program. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. Wow. I want to say you really get around, but I don't know if that's quite the appropriate phrasing there. But so I was going to ask you, how did you end up going through that winding path and ending up in a high school?
So while I was studying to become a classroom teacher, my campus job was working in the university library. And I just fell in love with that kind of work. And as my path found me, I lived in different states, and that was a time before the national board certification, so I'd have to start the certification process all over again for the classroom teaching position. So I, at that point, said, you know what, I really like libraries, and I think that's what I want to do. So fast forward, here I am with my master's from Rutgers University. That's where I got my degree.
It's a small world.
Yay! Yay!
So why don't you tell us a little bit about this lesson in terms of how did this come about? What was the sort of the origin story of this lesson?
Okay, so this lesson actually began as an inspiration by my one of my colleagues at school, at the high school. Her name is Jenny, and she is the AP psychology teacher. So this is high-level students that you have to prepare them, basically the classes to prepare them to take the AP test. That's the reality. So we had these high-level students. Jenny is a mom of 2 young children. And in her activities of picking up kids after school and running them to their different locations and stuff, they listen to this wonderful podcast called Smash Boom Best. And it's a debating podcast where they mash up funny, funky, different venues together. So, for instance, you might have pickles versus honey. And that's the debate topics. And they use a lot of personification. There's lightning rounds and several different rounds that people get to vote. The audience members get to go to their website and vote. So Jenny was preparing her AP students for their test, and they were getting to a unit on neurons and endorphins. And she thought, I bet LaDawna would be really interested in helping me figure out how we can do this Smash Boom Best kind of podcast environment with these students to learn these topics. So that's really the inspiration. Anybody who wants to try this lesson should certainly go to Smash Boom Best podcast, listen to it. You'll get a lot of inspiration because it's very fun. A lot of, like I said, personification goes into it. So you make your topic a person, but you have to learn about your topic to be able to do that.
Right.
So that's the inspiration.
I love that. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I had not heard of that one before, but I definitely have to get that one in my list because it sounds awesome.
Yeah. It's really fun. It's a very fun podcast. I would also mention with the podcast that if you go to their website, they have an educators tab on it, so you can take advantage of that environment too for educators, because they talk about how to set up debates. There's a whole curriculum for like 3 to 5th grade, 3rd to 5th grade. So, anyone who is interested should take a look at that and also listen to the podcast, because that's where you really start getting the idea and the flavor of how this lesson goes.
I love it. And I have to say that having that relationship with a teacher, that they are thinking, wow, my school librarian can help me with this, that really speaks to the culture that you help to build in that school. That's really outstanding.
Yeah, I loved. I actually got a text message from Jenny like at 10 o'clock the night she got the inspiration, and at 8 o'clock the next morning we were implementing the project in the library. So it really was a quick, let's do this, and it worked, and it was wonderful. So.
That's awesome. I love it. So why don't you walk us through some of the specifics? What would you say is maybe the primary objective that students are trying to achieve in this lesson?
Okay, so for our objectives, and of course, if you're adapting this lesson for any other topics, certainly you would look at your topics and your grade levels and things like that to adjust and adapt. But for our specific one, what we needed was for our students to be able to not only know the different types of the neurotransmitters, but also about the effects of drugs on those neurotransmitters, including antagonists and the reuptake of mechanisms. So it's like high-level thinking. So that was one particular objective, that we needed to get the kids to learn these things. We also needed them to know what serotonin is, dopamine, all these different inhibitors. And this was in preparation for their AP test. They just have to have that knowledge. We also wanted, of course, for them to use research strategies.
Right.
And these students had been in with me before and learned a lot of the base background way of doing research. I used a research model that I have adapted from my original research model, which I call Be Observant, and the ANT at the end is you have to analyze, you have to navigate, and you have to think. And all of those run in cycles. Right. So we were implementing that research model as well as trying to get them to use authoritative resources. We also wanted them to collaborate during their research and their presentation, and we wanted them to think critically as they applied their research in a creative environment.
So that's a lot of different moving pieces there, which I really like.
A lot of different pieces, and I would also mention that this lesson came right on the heels of the pandemic. So we were just returning back to the classroom environment. Excuse me. Let me get a drink of water here. So we were just returning to a face-to-face environment. The kids had been away from each other for months. People were desperate for
Yeah.
face-to-face and to enjoy, to laugh
Yeah.
again, you know. So I would say that this was just like the perfect lesson to bring kids back in and enjoy each
Yeah.
other. And while they're learning at the same time, and they didn't even realize they were
Well, those are the
learning.
best
So
lessons.
that was the joy of
Yeah,
it.
when you can get that opportunity to get the kids to have fun while also engaging and learning. I mean, that's the gold
Exactly.
standard right there. And I love that
Exactly.
you're looking at something that is so serious and so high level, but you found a way to. I mean, you said the podcast is sort of aimed at like third to fifth grade-ish. Sort of sounds like, but you're able to take it and use it in a fun way with these older kids. Which, I mean, clearly this is a lesson that's going to be able to be adapted up and down for grade levels and subject areas too.
Actually, I would like to make a little correction on that. The podcast is great for any age. I mean, adults will love this podcast. The curriculum materials that are on their website is focused on 3 to 5.
Gotcha.
But anybody will love this
I mean, it sounds
podcast.
great.
So, yeah, yeah, it's wonderful. And you learn so many different things. Like I said, pickles versus honey, or, jello versus cornstarch, or, just different kinds of elements. So, anyway, I just wanted to make that little
No, I
distinction there.
appreciate that. So, okay, we've got our objectives laid out. Is this a lesson? Is this like whole class instruction that then breaks into groups? It sort of sounds like, or how does it proceed?
Okay, so I also am a big proponent of guided inquiry
Mm,
design. Um, um, if you know the work of Dr. Leslie Maniotis, she is the developer and creator of guided inquiry design. And I use a lot of those strategies while teaching. So, in order to do that, it goes into steps. And I'm not going to get into the full blown, please look at Leslie's websites, and she's got several publications out that you can take a look. But lessons begin with an opening. And so we began the lesson with letting the students listen to the podcast. And you can do that a variety of ways. You can do it as a whole class, or you could do it as a homework assignment. We wanted them to be familiar with that format. So then from there, we moved into pairs. We teamed the students up into pairs. But we do have full classroom participation because each of the rounds that you're doing, so you'll have pairs of students that give their declaration of greatness. That's the first round. And so they have to introduce their particular, whether it's serotonin or some other entity, they have to do that introduction and do a declaration of greatness. Why are they so great? And then there's rebuttals. So another pair that's teamed up against this pair will do their rebuttal. And then you have the full class voting on who they think won that round.
nice.
So it's not just individual work. It's not just pairing work. It's a little bit of combination of everything, where we're getting full class participation as well as individual pairing up of
That's
work.
outstanding.
So I hope that explains it well
Oh,
enough.
absolutely. No, that's great. So it sounds like the students are they given the topic that they're going to research, or do they get to sort of pick from a pool?
Well, we designed it so that we had them randomly. We had specific entities that the kids have to
Right.
learn. They have to learn this. So we had the particular items that they would just basically draw out of a
Gotcha.
hat.
Okay.
And so then one pair would be serotonin, and one pair would be dopamine, and then we would decide who's going up against each other in the the
Right.
rounds of competition.
Were there multiple groups working on the same topics but in different rounds? Like, were there multiple dopamine versus serotonin groups, or did they kind of all get their own individual topics? I'm just curious.
Everybody got their individual, but that also again could be based on the size of your classroom, the number of pairs, what topics you're trying to get them to
Yeah.
learn. So you would have to adjust that for your own
Yeah.
environment.
I mean,
So
it sounds like it would make a lot more sense if they had separate topics, but I could also see it being kind of interesting if there were like head-to-head competitions between different
I,
groups on the same topics to see what kind of differences they can kind of pull out of stuff.
true, that would be very interesting
A
too.
lot of
Yeah,
possibilities. That,
definitely.
again, I love this lesson.
Yeah,
There's so many things you can do.
we designed the lesson so that after they picked their topics, the pairs picked their topics, then of course they had to have time to do the research on their
Hmm.
topics. So I used LibGuides in my practice, and so I threw together stuff the night before onto the LibGuide so that the students would be accessing authoritative resources as well as our print materials and things that we had available in the library. And so that was all set before they came in. But again, we went over the research strategies. Um, on my LibGuide, I would also include, in a lot of cases, good websites that they might access, but as well as our databases and different things like that. We have, I mean, the district I worked in had a nice um, support for the library. I had great support. So I had a lot of really good top level research materials that the students could
That's great.
use, which is important when you're doing these kind of very high level research
Oh,
projects.
absolutely.
So, what we discovered, the kids were so excited about this particular format that they were conniving to meet each other during the school day in different locations and stuff to work on their topics, and they were meeting after school as pairs, and get uh, egging each other on, because we also told them don't tell who what you're researching
Right.
either. We don't want your opponent to get any savvy on
Right.
you,
Right.
right? So but they would egg each other like, we're gonna beat you guys, and you just wait, we're working together tonight.
I
So
mean,
it was a lot of fun. A lot of excitement was generated from this
yeah. I mean,
lesson.
how often do you have students conniving to get more schoolwork done? You know, that's the hallmark of a great lesson right there. So they
Yeah.
get their topics, they do some research. Once they've had that time together, I'm assuming then they're going to go into the structured debate format.
Yes. Yes. And again, we used the same voting strategies that's on the website, on Smash Boom Best website. So they have the voting, because they have it in their podcasting environment. They have the audience members coming to vote on whatever topics they're doing in their podcast. So we use the same kind of voting strategy. We also, uh, I became the judge for the end, because you can really seriously have a tie, and there has to be a
Mm-hmm.
tiebreaker. And Jenny thought it would be better if I was the judge as opposed to her as the classroom
Right.
teacher, so that I could be a little more less favorable to, like, kids couldn't think that I was favoring one over
Right.
the other. So But that would be another way to draw in another teacher too. So with this lesson, if you could pull in your custodian, pull in whoever
That's a
is
great idea. I love
yeah.
that.
So yeah, get more involvement.
Yeah, definitely. So, as the lesson is going along, do you find yourself providing them with much guidance in terms of research strategies? Like, because you said you'd kind of already gone over them and you kind of gave them a refresher. As they're researching, do they get more pointers if they need them, or is it pretty much you've got what you need?
Well, they were very excited. We spent 2 days in the library doing the research
Gotcha.
stuff. So they had plenty of time to, tap into the resources and ask questions if they were struggling with ideas. But, once they're learning their topic, they begin creating whatever format they want to present their rounds of information. So, because the debate rounds, there's 3 debate rounds. There's the Declaration of Independence, or that's not Declaration of Independence, Declaration of Greatness. That's round one, and then round two is a micro round, and round three is the final six. So, in 6 words, they have to sum up why they should be the
Huh.
best. Those 6 words is the final. And each of the rounds, we give them a certain allotted amount of
Hmm.
time. I can't remember exactly what
Yeah.
it was, but we gave them a certain amount of time that they could do their declaration of greatness. And then team two would give their declaration of greatness. And you have a rebuttal in between those. So after one declaration of greatness, the pairing does their rebuttal. And then team two does their declaration of greatness. And then there's time for a rebuttal. And all of this is timed. Otherwise, you
Oh,
just go
yeah. No,
crazy.
I'm sure.
You go forever. But the kids were, after listening to the podcast, they knew that, oh, we have to do something creative. So they were writing poetry. They were turning their um, writing
Wow.
songs. And they didn't know what their micro round. The micro round is where we, the teachers, would give them, like, if your serotonin was going on a blind date, what would that look like? And so they would have to come up with that, and they only had a few minutes to actually put that together, and then we're ready for the debate. It wasn't like an overnight thing. It wasn't, you have to come up with how this blind date would happen in like
And
five
what a great
minutes.
way to kind of do that on the fly assessment of how well do you really know this stuff.
Exactly. And because there was such engagement by the whole class, we got reflections from the students post lesson, and we also got reflections from the students after they took their AP test.
Nice.
And I mean, the students were saying at the end of their AP test, I never really even had to study for those topics because I just knew. I knew that, so and so was on a blind date with, and this is what it did. So it was really a great way to engage students in a real learning environment that they really
They were really,
didn't realize they were
yeah,
learning, I
they were
guess.
so
They
invested.
were just having a lot of
Yeah, I
fun.
love that. And I also love the fact that they can kind of present their information in whatever format. I mean, that could really lend to maybe there are students who don't like to speak in front of a group, but they've got options that now they can figure out a different way to bring that information forward.
Oh, and they did. I mean, one student created a T-shirt that they came in wearing as they did their rebuttals or as they did their declaration. We had people doing some art kind of things. I mean, it was just really, we saw everything, and that's another thing about guided inquiry design is allowing students the creativity to do their own type of presentation, as opposed to defining, oh, you're going to do a report or you're going to do an essay at the end of this particular thing. No, you open it up and let the students decide how they're going to present their learning.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
it really
again, it's
great.
good instruction when you're able to do that, giving the kids that ownership and that
Yeah.
agency. That's outstanding. So it sounds like in terms of resources, you did some careful curation, and it sounds like you already had some pretty good access to resources within the library system,
Yeah.
which is great.
I did.
So you were able to kind of
I did.
cherry pick out, here's the things that students can go looking for. But I could also see this being maybe an open web sort of search if you wanted to reinforce those skills, if you were so inclined to go in that
Oh,
direction.
you could extend this lesson for a lot
Yeah.
longer. You could spend time on teaching the research method, getting students using a high level or whatever resources you have available
Yeah.
for them, and then teaching them research strategies, how to go about finding things on the open web, and and spend time doing
Yeah.
that, and then move into how do we put together a debate. You could even have, people writing down their debate topics before they actually got up to present them. So there's a lot of ways that this could be really extended. We didn't do
Yeah.
that because we had a unit that we needed to get taught, and also it was students that had already, they're basically seniors, and either juniors or seniors, and they're coming in. They've already had my instruction several times in different formats
Right.
and things. So we were really at a point where we could dive in and really run with the lesson in a very short amount of
Now,
time.
this is an amazing lesson. It is absolutely blowing my mind how great it works. How many times did you get to actually do this lesson? Was it just the one time, or were you able to come back to it?
Well, I just recently retired.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So it was once this was like my swan song into retirement. But I do know, I mean, Jenny, the classroom teacher, and I presented this lesson at the New Jersey Association of School Librarians annual conference that was just this past December, and she's already got my replacement person. They've already done it once. Now they're ready to do it again in the spring for the spring
That's a
semester.
nice little legacy to leave
So
behind.
yeah, it's great. So, and also if you want to know more about the lesson, it is also published in the School Library Connection journal magazine. So you can take a look there for the whole layout too if you need
Perfect.
it.
That's great. So it sounds like there's a lot of ability to sort of adjust or differentiate the lesson for the students that are involved in the lesson. You were working with very higher end, older students, but it sounds like you could really do a lot of fine tuning with if you had students with particular needs or students that had particular focus or interests. You could really tailor this to them.
Oh, I absolutely. You could break apart, like I said, you could break apart the research and really spend, as much time as the classroom teacher will give you on working through research strategies. I know that if classroom teachers get it, that the collaboration with the librarian will make their jobs
Yes.
easier, then that's the ticket to getting more access to
Right.
students. And I've been very fortunate with my teachers and the situations that I've been in, both in middle school and high school, that I guess there was a level of trust or a level of enthusiasm. One of my favorite things is creative lesson planning. I love doing that. And so I think once you can get your foot in the door with that first
Right.
lesson, And if you're, you know, give a lot of license to creativity, because in my first book that I wrote, I talk about how problems are solved through play. And you can see that in the kindergarten
Mm.
classroom. You can see it with kids on the playground. You're building a bridge with blocks. That's a
Yeah.
problem. How do you solve the problem? How do you make it work? And it's fun. You're enjoying it and you're solving problems. So that's always been sort of my, I guess, backbone to everything I've done in my library classroom. Is I really want to bring play and creativity in so that the problems don't seem like
Right.
problems. It's just something you're excited about finding out
Oh, I
about.
love
So,
that. Now,
so yes, you can break this down, is what I'm saying. I guess that was a long-winded way of saying that, yeah, break it down, use it for, what level of students I do. I worked very, very closely with my ELL
mm,
teacher, which English language learners, and we did full year units, and we would break down the level of research to, you know, but our end product was not really about the
right,
research. It was about learning how to speak
right.
English, and so, but we were able to embed that. And I like that terminology of being an embedded
Yeah.
librarian, that you're just embedded in their
Yeah,
work, in the class teacher's work.
I love
So
it. This is usually a point where I ask what kind of feedback you got from students and staff, but you've already told us that the kids were like over the moon about how well they were able to take in the information. And clearly your teachers love it too, because even though you have moved on, your teacher collaborator is still working on this lesson and has sort of, I'll say, indoctrinated your your replacement with this lesson. So clearly this is something that went over real big.
I have to tell you that one of our students, his last name, and it's eluding my brain right now, but it was very close. Oh no, his first name was Ron, and he became known as Sir Ron Tonin the whole rest of the year, because they loved it so much. And he had done serotonin, but he was serotonin. But I could give you right from the students. So this is students' voice about the lesson. It said, Jack and I had a ton of fun making the presentation, especially the freedom to present our neurotransmitters, but with jokes and other creative elements, like a song or a custom designed shirt added in. It definitely helped me remember serotonin on the test in class and on the AP exam, as well as other neurotransmitters that were presented. And he goes on to tell which ones and stuff. He said it definitely helped us connect with our classmates, creating the atmosphere we have in class nowadays. So, I mean, that to me, it almost brought tears to my eyes when we got that
Yeah.
reflection, because like I said at the beginning, we were just coming out of this pandemic, and to hear how the students had really connected with this lesson and how it made them feel so creative and
Yeah.
connected to their classmates and stuff, as well as to the
Yeah.
topics. So it was really
I love
dynamic.
that the
So
lesson is not just building knowledge, but it's building community. That's powerful. That's
yeah,
really powerful.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So, do you have any advice for folks who might want to do this lesson with their own students? Anything they should sort of have in mind or be thinking about?
The first thing I would say, go listen to Smash Boom Best
Yeah, it
podcast.
sounds great.
Go listen to it. Just enjoy it. It's a very funny, uh, great way to learn about so many different topics. I mean, I listened to one the other day, and I don't I don't know if I should say it on the podcast, but the topics were sneezes versus farts. But you learn all about why biologically why you're sneezing and the other part, and they had to bring about their declaration of greatness and all that kind of stuff. But in the process, they're introducing this very scientific information that you're learning about, but in such a fun way. And they usually on the podcast, they also have celebrities come on and be the personification of whoever it is. But so that would be my first suggestion to anybody wanting to try this lesson. Go to Smash Boom Best first, listen to it, see all the options that you would have on the different types of topics that you want to bring in to work with. And then, I guess determine what level, grade level, what kind of adaptations you might need to make for yourself. Like I said, ours, we only did like 2 days in the library doing the research and putting everything together. And then we did whatever amount of time it took to do the rounds. We allowed 2 days for the rounds, but we found that we didn't have quite enough time to get it done in 2 days. So, because the debates can take a bit of time too. And then you have, the raucous,
right.
Like, no, I think I should have won. No, you should, So there's all of that kind of silliness that goes on with it, but it's great. So those are the things that I would suggest, looking at how you can either slow it down. I think a lot of people might not be at the level my AP students were at. So you would want to take more time. And I think it could be worked in a history classroom. It could be worked in a science classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
It could be worked in your English classroom if you're working on a certain novel that you're going through, and you could pit characters against each other. So there's all kinds of ways that you could adapt this and make it work for your classroom.
Absolutely. I'm seeing the same thing in my head. I'm just seeing every class, everybody's just doing this lesson because it's so adaptable and useful. It's great. Man, so thank you so much for coming to share this with us, because I know people are going to want to run with this. I know I want to run with this. I'm ready to jump into it. So how can listeners connect with you in the future if they want to catch up with where you're at?
So my Twitter account is at LD Herring, LD for LaDawna, and then the first part of my last name, Harrington. So LD Herring is my Twitter, and my email, but please make sure you preface in the subject area, Smash Boom Best or lesson help or whatever, is LaDawna Harrington at gmail.com. So it's my full name and at gmail.com.
That's very generous of you to offer that to everybody. I appreciate that. Thank you again so much for bringing this to us. I am so glad we got to have this conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to the resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them and links to the book break recommendations. And stop by the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the School Librarian Learning Network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's schoolliblearning@gmail.com. Know a school librarian with something others could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.